Hey everyone, coming to you completely hands-free from the car today. I was thinking about the core of my online coaching program and kind of all the horsemanship that I teach and what that is, and I want to talk with you about that today. And what that is pair bonding. So pair bonding is, you know what it is, right? Sometimes we call it buddy sour, or we call it barn sour. And it's interesting because even if, let's just say you take your horse to a clinic or a workshop and you go by yourself, just the two of you, and you show up there and your horse just wants to be with every other horse. They'll just glom on to some other horse and they just want to be instantly together. So that if you have a horse like that, that tells you how deeply this need and desire for pair bonding is. So every horse is gregarious or has a desire to be together in varying degrees. But most horses have a very strong desire to be together. And that is because that is the nature of the herd animal. And it's the same way with, like at where I work, we have 2 goats, 2 donkeys, and 2 horses, and they go 2 by 2 all together wherever they go. They can pair up in any way that they want, and certainly we've seen unusual pairings, where maybe in the birds, right? One of the peacocks will be hanging around with the duck, or with a guinea hen, or we'll have a cat that really likes the dog, or a dog whose best friend is the cat, or and you can look on the social media platforms to see unusual pair bonds. But pair bonding is, I assert, the reason why we marry, the reason why we like to be coupled, the reason why we as a community, and I should say how we as community get things done. So in the horse world, pair bonding is something that creates safety. So I don't have to see everywhere. I only have to see where you're not looking to keep us safe. I can look to test the waters to see if it's safe to cross while you watch, or I can watch you test the waters, whoever maybe has a little bit more courage or a more desire to go to a place. I can watch you test the waters to see if that's something that I feel like is safe. So we get courage from our pair bonds. We can mutually groom with our pair bonds, so we can scratch each other's backs or withers or necks in a place that potentially we can't reach. But the biggest reason for pair bonding is emotional security, or feeling emotionally safe at a particular time. And again, you'll see that, you'll go to a clinic and all of a sudden your horse thinks that horse is its best friend in the world and it can't possibly leave it. I mean, you may have met some friends on a trail ride one time, and all of a sudden your horse, it's like you're riding the entire herd. You're no longer there with just your horse. Your horse just wants to be wherever those horses are, and they're panicking if they can't be right next to them. Or let's just say you want to turn around and go the other direction and say, all right, you guys, I'll see you later. And there's no way your horse is leaving those other horses, So that's the pair bond. That's how strong and how innate the pair bond is. So how do we use the pair bond to create a deep and unbreakable bond with our horses? That relationship that we want with our horses that keeps everyone safe. Right? Maybe you're already starting to put together the building blocks and start to see that we're using the innate characteristics of the horse, what's true and real for the horse, to help us create that place of safety and fun and joy and freedom that we got a horse for. This partnership, this thing that I know that for me, that was the fantasy as a kid. I would ride bareback and bridleless, and just go where my horse, and I wanted to go, I would think go that way and my horse would go that way. I would think go that way and my horse goes that way. It's like that when you meet up on that trail, and all of a sudden they all have the same idea about where they're going to go. They come up with this, they have this mental telepathy, this unspoken way of knowing exactly where we're going to go and exactly what's going to happen next, and how important that is to the communication of the herd. Well, we too can develop that, but we are the ones who have to change. We're going to essentially go into the horse's world. So much of horsemanship is bringing the horses into our world. And it's very true. The horses actually are brought into our world, in that we keep them in unnatural environments. We put them in pens and barns, and choose their friends, and, move them from barn to barn so they don't actually get to choose their friends. So we create these really super unnatural environments. So at some point we've got to go into the horse's world, and we need to see what really is natural to horses. And I say that because what is natural to horses would be what they would do if they were left to their own devices in the wild. So in an environment where they're safe and they can choose who they want to be with, that would be what I would call natural. I'm not talking about the world of natural horsemanship that we see today, where we do things like make the wrong thing difficult and the right thing easy, or there's round penning. Those types of things. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about in a world where all things are equal, where we need to count on the horse and the horses need to count on us because we're spending all of our time together. What would be natural in that situation? So obviously one of the key ingredients is that you've got to spend time with your horse, because what happens is they spend all their time in the company of other horses and they don't spend enough time in our company. Sometimes if we only have one horse, maybe that works. If we're a person who just has one horse and it's kept in our backyard, that might be something that, we spend a lot more time with our horses. But oftentimes, we go in the house at night, or we go home at night, and our horse is left on its own or left with its other buddies. And then they're going through those times of maybe when you need to be on more high alert, they're going through those times without us, because we're in our house, or we're with our families, or we're at work, or wherever it is that we are when we're leaving our horses behind. So we need to think about, when we are with our horses, we need to take the most advantage of what is it that we want to do with our horses, right? And one of the most, literally the most natural things that horses do together are go walking. They go walking together. They're often not far apart. Even if they're grazing on one side of the field and the other side of the field, they're always aware of what's happening. If one horse turns around and takes off, usually everybody is going to turn around and take off. Even if one horse just moseys on over to the water, usually everybody decides, I'm thirsty. That's social intelligence. That's a collective knowing. And that's really part of the pair bonding process, is being aware of social intelligence, or being aware of the collective knowing. It's what has horses be able to all know that we're turning here, or it's what has flocks of birds be able to not fly into one another, or schools of fish be able to all get on the same page about a thing, and not and without words, without using verbal cues. So walking is one of the most natural things in the world. Now here's the other thing, and I'll probably just use this as the only example because I don't want to go on too long about this. So when we go out walking with our horses, right, because that's what horses do with each other. They would go walking 2 by 2. They would go walking side by side. They would eat together. They would graze together. They would mosey around together. They might investigate things together. They might explore things together. When we do that with our horses, or when we want to do that with our horses, and we find that our horses are unconfident or unsafe going just with us, think about how it might be if there was a brand new horse in the pasture and that horse wanted your horse just to go with them. Maybe your horse would go with them, but if they had a herd of their own and they had a routine and a life that they loved, they probably wouldn't just leave and go with this new horse. So you have to consider that there might be ways that you need to help this horse want to come with you. And one of those ways would be that you would be paying attention to what your horse needs. You wouldn't ever be forcing them. Horses don't force other horses. They don't get out their halters and lead ropes and sticks and strings and whips and all of that stuff and force horses into anything. That's not how pair bonding works. That's how forcemanship works, is we force them into doing things. Now, I'm not saying this is the quickest way to get your horse to go with you, but what I am saying is this is a way to get your horse to want to go with you and to not leave you as soon as they can and run back to their buddies and run back to the horses they are pair bonded with. This is how you get your horse to get in the trailer with just you and go off to the show, or to go off on the trail ride, or to go to the clinic, or wherever it is that you guys decide you want to go. So walking with your horse and paying attention to what your horse wants and needs, and thinking about what would another horse do in this situation. And I'll tell you a little short story, and you may have heard it before if you've been following me for a little bit, but when I got my horse Valentine, it was not my first horse. When I got Valentine, my property is set up as a track system, so the horses can travel all over, and they can travel all over together, but on different tracks. When I got my horse Valentine, she did not want to cross the water, and she didn't want to cross the water because, well, I don't know why, but everybody else liked to cross the water because the best grazing was across the water. And I watched my horse Jessie, who knew it was safe to cross the water. I watched her for 2 days help Valentine to cross that water. She never got out her halter and lead rope and stick and forced her into crossing the water. She never did that. What she did was show her over and over and over again that it's okay to cross the water, that it's good to cross the water. She would go across the water and she would graze right there, and she would just constantly be grazing, and she'd look back and she'd walk through the water again. She'd go stand in the water. She did all of these things to help Valentine understand that it was good to cross the water. Being good to cross the water, a want to is important. Wanting to cross the water is important, right? Why does the horse want to? Well, one of the reasons is the good grazing, but another of the reasons is the rest of the herd is over there. It's also how Sterling learned to cross the water at first. Sterling, when he was a little baby horse, he stood there on the edge of the creek bank and he was just like, I can't do this, until everyone else went through the water and everyone else was on the other side of the creek and they were all fine, and he really wanted to be with them. He wanted to be with them for that pair bonding reason. So that brings me to this next piece. There is the time, but there's also who you're being about it. You have to be someone who's willing to put in the time. You have to be willing to ask and ask and ask and ask again and ask again, and be patient in your waiting. Patience, literally the meaning of the word patience is the attitude with which we wait, right? So that would mean we're really present, we're really in it, we're really there, we're not going like, oh my gosh, I've got to pick the kids up and I've got to get to work and I've got to go do the dishes and I have to make dinner and I have a barn to clean. We're not doing that, right? We're just in. So it took Jessie 2 days. Now, typically we don't have 2 days, so we have other strategies, right? It took Jessie all day and all night, right, for 2 days. But we have other strategies that we can use, and that doesn't include forcing, but it does include proving to our horse in every situation that we're in that we're 100% present and that we are the source of all good things. I'm going to talk about that in a whole nother video, about being the source of all good things. But if you want to learn more about pair bonding and how you can do the work of transforming who you're being in the company of your horse, and any horse for that matter, and help your horse to create that pair bond, reach out. Reach out to me, Marianne at mariannebrewer.com, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks for watching.